Yomi, we're going to start on the bottom of Ayin Tesama Base 79b. The Daf Yomi is Nedarim Pei, Nedarim 80. And we go back for a moment to the Mishnah. The Mishnah discussed those vows that a husband is able to annul. He's able to cancel the vows of his wife if they are, according to our Mishnah, vows that are Inoi Nefesh, afflictions of the soul. And the Mishnah gives us an example, im erchatz ve'im lo erchatz. If I'll bathe, if I will not bathe. Im kashet ve'im lo kashet. If I'll put on cosmetics, if I won't put on cosmetics. The Gemara says on the bottom of our daf, Amar, what is this Mishnah referring to? What do you mean, if I'll bathe, if I will not bathe? What's the vow? If she wants to vow that she can't bathe, just say a vow that I will not bathe. Or if she wants to say a vow that I will bathe, a vow that I will bathe. So why is it put in a conditional clause? If I bathe or if I will not bathe. What does that even mean? That's what the Gemara says. If you want to say that she says, she takes a vow, she says, I'm not going to eat any fruit today. I'm not going to eat any fruit forever. If I will bathe, then lamala hafara. Then why is he able to reject the vow? Lo terchatz, let her not bathe, lo litzaram perasolam, and then the fruits will not be forever forbidden. Gemara assumes, according to this question, that not bathing is not considered to be affliction. So that's the first question that the Gemara asks. Let her not bathe, and then she won't be prohibited to eat the fruits. And if you want to say, the Gemara asks the question from the opposite perspective. Why does so the Gemara asks the question, with this, why does Rabbi Yossi say with respect to this is not going to be considered an affliction of the soul? Rabbi Yossi said in our Mishnah, the Gemara says, why does Rabbi Yossi say this is not affliction of the soul? So maybe she will bathe. The Paris Olamala. Maybe she will bathe, and then the fruits will be prohibited upon her. So the Gemara asks, the first question is, why is it considered an affliction? Let her not bathe. And the second question is, why does Rabbi Yossi say it's not an affliction? Maybe she will bathe. So the Gemara therefore says, the Gemara says, what are we referring to? On the top of 80a, what we're referring to is the Amra Konem Hanas Rechitza Alai La'olam Im Erchatz. That she says, what she actually said was, she says, I'm never going to have, not that she connected it to fruit, but she connected it to bathing. She said, I'll never be able to bathe forever if I'll bathe. So therefore, since she puts it in the conditional clause, Mishimarachi made for Allah, because for this reason, he's allowed to be made for it. We'll look at the Ran. Kivan the Ka'amra Hachi, since she says this, Rechitza Rishona Sharyala. So therefore, the first Rechitza is permitted to her. From that point on, she's not going to be allowed to bathe. So the first, if he rejects it, the first one is permitted. So why is he allowed to reject it? That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah is saying that if she says, I'm not going to be allowed to bathe forever, if I bathe today. So meaning to say that the Chachamim are saying that he could still reject that vow, even though bathing today is not an affliction of Inoi Nefesh, because you're allowed to bathe, but by bathing, that kicks in this concept that you're not allowed to bathe. Therefore, he's allowed to reject the vow, because at the end of the day, her bathing today is really affliction of the soul. David, what will she do? Tirchatz, let's say she's going to bathe, mitzra hanas rechitza Allah, then she'll never be allowed to bathe again. And lo tirchatz, and if she won't bathe, Islay Nivla, then she's going to look disgusting. She's going to be disgusting because she didn't bathe. She's going to smell disgusting. So therefore, that's why the Chachamim say that if she takes the vow like that, then the husband's allowed to reject it, even though the actual bathing is not going to be considered to be affliction of the soul. But Rabbi Yossi Savar, no. Rabbi Yossi says, Efshar de lo rochza, v'nivo lo chashinan. So the Gemara, and Rabbi Yossi says, no, she can't bathe because she can't, he can't annul the vow, because it's very possible that she won't take a bath. And if she won't take a bath, we're not concerned that she's going to look disgusting. V'nivo lo chashinan. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, listen, we have a better way to teach this here. It should have just said, why did it have to say it in this convoluted manner? It should have just said it's following. Rabbi Yossi Omer, that if she puts it in this conditional manner, that's not going to be considered inui nefesh. And we'll again here look at how the Ran explains this. Pirish Harav Rabbeinu Yonah. The Ran turns to Rabbeinu Yonah and he says, "Dahash the Tana ein elu nidre inui nefesh." Because since Rabbi Yossi's, what does Rabbi Yossi say in the Mishnah? He said, "This is not inui nefesh. Mashman the mishum she'ein haneder inui nefesh lo yafer," because he implies that this vow itself is not inui nefesh. And so therefore it can't reject it. But if he did make a vow of Inui Nefesh, he could reject it. But this is not accurate. This doesn't reflect this explanation of the Gemara. The Kivan de Betana Leika Inui Nefesh. Since in the condition there's no Inui Nefesh, I feel Nadja Beperis Olam Yefer. Then even if she made a vow with fruits forever, he would not be able to reject it, because since the initial part is not inui nefesh. So the point is that Rabbi Yossi is saying that the problem is the conditional clause is not inui nefesh, because the first aspect of it is not inui nefesh. And so therefore she can annul it. But the language of the Mishnah says this is not inui nefesh, which implies that he's saying bathing is not inui nefesh. So therefore, it doesn't match with the conditional clause. So therefore, for this reason, the Gemara says, "Ela da'amra hanas rechitza alayla olam em erchatz hayom." So what's the conditional clause? The way she said it, she says, "I'm not going to bathe forever if I will bathe today." So again, the Chacham say the same thing, that he can annul it, because if she bathes today, then he's not going to be able to bathe forever. And Rabbi Yossi said, and if she doesn't bathe today, she's going to be disgusting. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says, no, he can't annul it under those circumstances, because it's a fundamental dispute. Now it's about nivul dechai yoma. If not bathing for one day is considered to be disgusting and affliction. Nivul dechai yoma rosh mein nivul. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. Not bathing for one day is not going to be considered nivul. Disgusting. So this is now how we go to the essence of the debate. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. That's not called nivul. Bathing for one day is not called nivul. But the Chacham say, yeah, you can annul this vow, because either way, she's going to be in a place of Inui Nefesh, and so therefore the vow needs to be annulled. So the Gemara says, well, wait. According to this approach, shanis im erchatz im lo erchatz. You've solved the issue. You've clarified the case of if he says, I will bathe, or if I'll not bathe. So he said it about bathing for one day. You've qualified how he said, if I will bathe. You've qualified that clause of the Mishnah, where she says, if I will bathe today, I'll not be able to bathe forever. But what about imlo erchatz? What about the next clause? It says, if I will not bathe. What does that have to do with anything? So how would we explain that? So the Gemara explains. The Gemara explains as follows: if she had said, the Gemara explains the question. If she had said, "I'll never be able to bathe forever if I will not bathe today," why does he need to reject a vow? Then she just needs to bathe. If she bathes today, titzachi. If she'll bathe today, then she can bathe forever. He doesn't need to reject that vow. That's not a vow of Inor Nefesh. So Amar Rav Yehuda. So therefore, Rav Yehuda says, how do we explain the second clause of the Mishnah? What she said was, Hanas Rochitza Alai Olam Im Lo Erchatz B'mei Mishra. So she said, if I don't bathe today, I won't be able to bathe forever. But she said, if I don't bathe today in something which is affliction of the soul, in something in putrid waters, the waters that they used to steep the flax in when they were preparing the flax to be used as fabric, so that is Inoi Nefesh, because that water is disgusting. So therefore, if I don't bathe today in this thing which is disgusting, then I won't be able to bathe forever. So that is a vow that the Rabbanan said he could annul. And Rabbi Yossi would say that that's not considered Inoi Nefesh. But the Gemara says we have a problem with that, because the next case in the Mishnah was im eskashet, im lo eskashet. If I will put on cosmetics, if I will not. But what would be the parallel case to these putrid waters? That would be that if I will not adorn myself today with neft. Neft is like petroleum, but that's not. Nobody would ever confuse petroleum with cosmetics. This is considered dirt. It's not petroleum. It's not cosmetics. So Amar Rav Yehuda. So therefore, what are we talking about? The Amra. So therefore, Rav Yehuda has to say a different answer. What's going on? She says, I'll not be able to bathe. So he says we have to re-examine both cases. Not like we said initially, that he says, if I will bathe today, I won't be able to bathe forever, which was the initial way that we said there was dispute. Rav Yehuda gives a different explanation. She says, I won't be able to bathe forever in Mirchat Hayom. That's the first case. Okay, we explained that. That's consistent with the first case we said. But what do we do with the second case? She says, if I will not bathe. And then she says, a shavua, not a vow, but a shavua shelo erchatz. And then she takes a vow that I will not bathe. Shavua shelo erchatz. She takes a vow that I will not bathe, meaning to say that she doesn't put this prohibition in a condition, but she just swears that she's not going to bathe. And that's what Rabbi Yossi and Chachamim are arguing. If by not bathing there is considered to be Inoi Nefesh, Rabbi Yossi says it's not, and the Chachamim say it is. And that's also the same thing with respect to the adornments. If I put on the cosmetics today, I'll never be able to put on cosmetics. And then Shvua Shelo Eskashet. And then she takes an oath that I'm not going to put on cosmetics. And so therefore, it's really the first case is where the Mishnah is referring to two cases. The first case is where she is dealing with bathing or putting on adornments forever. If she will first bathe or put on adornments today. And so that's a dispute between the Rabban and Rabbi Yossi if that case is going to be applicable. And then there's an additional case where the woman takes a straight out vow not to bathe or to put on adornments. That's the way the Ran explains it. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, there's a problem with the Lashon of the Mishnah. What's that? If that's the case, our Mishnah shouldn't say these are the Nedarim. That's the name of our chapter. It should say these are vows and oaths. So that's the first problem. Our Mishnah doesn't say oaths; it says vows. And alternatively, so he answers, Amarei Tani Elu Nedarim Ushvuos. So he says, okay, we could deal with that problem. We could amend the text and add in the word oaths, no problem. So the Gemara says, but we have another answer also. We buy the same alternative answer is Shvua Nami Hainu Nedarim. That oaths really are the exact same thing as vows. The Tanan, like we learned earlier in our tractate, Kinidre Rishayim, Nadar ben Nazir, Ubekarban B'Shvua. If a person says like taking a vow like the wicked ones, this is a yad, this is like a shortened version of a vow, and it applies to vows so he vowed to be a Nazarite, a carbon by comparing the carbon with the shvua. So we see from here that the shvua is associated with the neder. It's the same thing. So now the Gemara says, okay, now that we've explained according to these different approaches how to understand the case of the Mishnah. Now let's go deeper into the position of the Mishnah, that the Rabbanan are saying that not bathing is considered inoy nefesh, an affliction of the soul, and Rabbi Yossi says it's not inoy nefesh. So the Gemara says we have a problem with this. The Rabbanan really say that if you don't bathe, that's considered to be inoy nefesh. By not bathing, you've afflicted your soul. Is that really the case? The Rabbanan say if you don't bathe, you've afflicted your soul. There are many. We have a contradiction. What's the contradiction? It says in the Braisa in Meseches Yoma, dealing with the laws of Yom Kippur, where it says on Yom Kippur that a person has an obligation to afflict themselves, and any soul, kikol nefesh, asher lo te'uneh, any soul who will not afflict themselves on this very day, they'll be cut off. And we know, says the Braisa, we know that there are 5 things that you're not allowed to do on Yom Kippur because they're considered inoy nefesh, afflictions. What are the 5 things that what are the 5 ways you're supposed to afflict yourself on Yom Kippur? No eating and drinking, no leather shoes, no tashmish amita, and not allowed to be with one's wife, no anointing, and no bathing. But you might think, okay, so that isn't that proof that bathing is inoy nefesh, not bathing? The Braisa says, afal pi sha'atzer v'kulan, even though you're not allowed to do all 5 of these things, in honor shkaris ela ba'ochel v'shosav osam malacha bavad. No, the only way you get punishment of kares for the violation of the biblical prohibition of afflicting your soul is through the prohibition of eating and drinking and doing malacha and doing work. And if you want to say that if you don't bathe on Yom Kippur, that if you bathe on Yom Kippur, that by bathing on Yom Kippur, that by not bathing you're afflicting your soul. Then on Yom Kippur, when you bathe, you should be chayav kares. But for the fact that the Rabbanan say that not bathing is an affliction, then on Yom Kippur you should be liable for kares for this. So the Gemara's answer is Amar Rava. Rava responds to this and he gives an answer. He says that we have to understand from the context that there could be something that's an affliction within the context of Yom Kippur. That's not an affliction within the context of Yom Kippur, but there is an affliction within the context of a vow. Because they're talking about 2 different types of affliction. Minyana dekra gaba Yom Kippurim, it goes to the context by Yom Kippur where it states, Ta'anuas nafsho sechem. It says you shall afflict your soul. So this teaches us milsa diyada inuye hashta. This has to be something which you know about your affliction right now. And by not bathing, it's different than not eating. And if you go a day without bathing, it's not recognizable to others that you're having an affliction. Or Shita Mikubetzis offers the second approach. You yourself don't necessarily feel it the way you feel by not eating. It needs to be something milsa diyada. It needs to be something diyada inuye hashta. And Rechitze lo yada inuye hashta. But bathing, the affliction is not immediately recognizable. Gabe Nedarim, but by vows, Dichsev kol neder v'chol shvus Yisrael la'anos nefesh. But by vows, we're talking about a person, a woman who makes a vow to afflict herself. We're talking about milsa the asuledi, and that's not talking about something that's recognizable now. There, we're looking at the long term, something that will bring her to a state of affliction, and so therefore, the chiro rochza. And if she doesn't bathe ever, that's what the Chum say, she's going to come to this state of affliction. So that's the answer that the Rabbanan say. That's the distinction between Yom Kippur. Why is bathing not considered inoy nefesh on Yom Kippur? Because on Yom Kippur, we're talking about an affliction of the soul, which is immediately apparent. And bathing is not immediate. But for vows, we're talking about something that will eventually become an affliction of the soul. And so therefore, the husband can reject the vow. See from here a deep concept that Yom Kippur is something that right at that moment, because it's that one day, it has to be felt that very day in order for it to be a real affliction. You can't just say that eventually it'll do that. Yom Kippur is a holiday of, very much in the moment. We want them, we can't talk about the future. It has to be that moment. We want to be transformed. The Rami, the Rabbi Yossi, and the Gemara says in this context, we have another problem. Rabbi Yossi here says that bathing is not an affliction of the soul. This is a problem because it seems to contradict what Rabbi Yossi says elsewhere, where he says not bathing is something that's devastating, that is an affliction of the soul. How do we say this? Because what's the case? Let's say you have Mayan Shabbanei Ha'ir. Let's say you have a spring of the city. Mayan Shabbanei Ha'ir. Chayeyan V'chayei Acherim Chayeyan Kodmin V'chayei Acherim. Let's say you have a spring of the city, and in this spring of the city, you have two different cities fighting for the water. There's the people who are in let's say there's the first city to get the spring, and then there's other people who are downstream. So we're going to say the people who get the water first, their lives come before the lives of other people. And the Ran explains that what we're talking about is where, of course, we remember where this is a dispute between Ben Petura and Rabbi Akiva in Baba Metzia, where there the two people are walking in the desert, and one of them has a cup of water. Ben Petura says, split it with your friend, so that you, even though if you split it, neither one of you is going to live. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says, Chayecha Kodmin, that your life, Rabbi Akiva came along and taught that your life comes before the life of other people. And so therefore, this Gemara immediately brings that Gemara to mind. So if you have the opportunity to drink from the spring and save the people, your city comes first. Let's say you have let's say you have your animal and the animals of other people, then to feed. So then we feed also your animal first. But kfisasan, let's say your laundry, let's say your laundry and the laundry of others. Your laundry comes before the laundry of others. But now the Gemara says, and let's say you have an opportunity to support your city with drinking water and also do your city's laundry. And then the flip side of that is the other city, if you do your laundry, the other city won't have enough water to drink. So let's say America has enough water to sustain itself and to do its own laundry, and Mexico or Canada doesn't have enough water to drink. So should America do its laundry first, or give Mexico and Canada drinking water? So the Gemara says, according to the Rabbanan, that the other people's lives come before your laundry. Meaning to say, America would have to give its water to Canada or Mexico before it did its own laundry. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says, no, says America will be able to do its own laundry before it gives drinking water to Canada or Mexico. So this seems to be that Rabbi Yossi is saying that drinking, not doing laundry is such a disability that you can take it even before you give the other person water to drink to save their life, because he's going to be so afflicted by not doing his laundry. So the Gemara says, Hashta kvisa. So here's the question. If when it comes to laundry, Rabbi Yossi is saying, Yesh batzar, that there's such tremendous pain, Guf kul kol shekain, for sure, if you don't bathe your whole body, there's going to be tremendous pain. So how can Rabbi Yossi say that not bathing is not considered an affliction of the soul? On the top of Pei Aleph, the Gemara explains, on the top of Pei Aleph, the Gemara says, Amri, yes, Kvisa alima lo Rabbi Yossi. Actually, not doing laundry is more torturous to the soul than not bathing. The Amar Shmuel, as Shmuel taught, Hayravu visa dereisha. If you have lice in your head, masi lidei ivra, that causes blindness. If Ravuse demani, if your clothes are dirty, masi lidei shamu misa, that brings you to insanity. And if Ravisa de gufa, and if your body is dirty, masi lidei shichli v'kivi, that brings you to boils. And so, as the commentaries point out, as the Ran points out, that the boils you can heal them, and so therefore it's not as bad as insanity. When you have insanity, you're unable to heal it, and so therefore that's why not doing laundry is more of an affliction of the soul than not bathing, and that's the way we answer the contradiction of Rabbi Yossi. Okay, we'll stop the recording here. If anybody has any questions, happy to address.